Welcome to the pod, Khurram. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
You're a well-established attorney here in the Atlanta, Georgia area, mainly in Norcross, but you serve the entire metro Atlanta area. And I just wanted to deep dive into how you even got into establishing the law firm, what got you into law, and what the future holds for Baig Law Firm. So I guess let's start there. Tell us a little bit about what got you into law.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. The journey into law was interesting because it was not my plan A. Initially, I think like a lot of folks from our backgrounds, I was on the med school track, and it was really an experience in high school that made me understand that law could be a real option for me. And my high school was a really, really strong mock trial high school. Like I said, we had, I don't know, something like 11 region championships in a row. They felt like the Braves, just dominating mock trial in the 90s. But I got a chance to try out for the team, got onto the team, and long story short, I really, really fell in love with the whole experience of working up a case, trying a case in a courtroom, going in front of a judge, making a legal argument. And this is as a high school student. So it was something that I was like, wow, that was really cool, but I don't realistically think I'll ever do it. I just kind of pushed it out, went forward with the med school track, got to Emory where I went to undergrad, and probably like a lot of folks, organic chemistry did it for me. I was like, yeah, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I got weeded out in Orgo, and then I said, I got to come up with something that I really want to do, that I'm passionate about. And honestly, for me, the law was that perfect combination of kind of talent and passion. I could see myself using the law to kind of do a lot of different things. And ultimately, as I kind of went down that path, it's, fast forward now, 20 years later, it's kind of proven to be true. But that's what set me down that path.
So just out of curiosity, what did your parents think the minute you shifted?
Oh, man. Listen, my dad was growing up, he was fairly quiet in terms of his opinions on anything I did in terms of education and process. He just kind of defaulted and let me do my thing. And, I rewarded him by coming home with all A's and, winning all these awards and things that, the good firstborn,
of course,
Desi Muslim child is supposed to do, right? So, but I will never forget that dinner conversation when I told him that I don't want to go to med school, and the anger on his face and the frustration and the tension at that dinner. Oh, it was I'll never forget it. He was extremely disappointed. But I'll tell you this, he came around real quick. He came around real quick to the idea of me being a lawyer. And frankly, from the day I passed the bar to now, he's been my biggest cheerleader. He's told so many people with so much pride, my son's a lawyer, and sometimes, many times when I wish he wouldn't. but that was the kind of profound memory of that moment.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you passed the bar. What's the next step after that? Do you join a law firm, or do you go straight to opening up your practice?
No. So, well, back then, so I came out of law school in 2003. The landscape was considerably different then than it is now. I think now, with technology and some of the things that have leveled the playing field, I think it's a lot more feasible to start your own practice right out of law school if you were to do it today. Back then, not so much. Back then, I think you needed to work in as many different legal environments as possible, because my opinion, and I share this with prospective law students and law students all the time, is you really need to figure out what you don't want to do. It's not even about what you want to do. It's about what you don't want to do, because you just don't know enough about what the actual practice of law is.
It's basically you haven't tasted enough to understand what you want.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So for myself, I had a kind of 15-year plan. The first 5 years were dedicated to just figuring out what I don't want to do. So I started out doing criminal defense exclusively. That's all I did. I worked for actually a very well-known Muslim attorney in town named Akil Secret. One of my mentors, so much respect for Brother Akil, he gave me an opportunity just based off the strength that I was Muslim. There's a whole story as to how I met him, but the long story short, when he found out I was Muslim, he's like, "You're hired." And this is at a time there were not, it's still at this point in 2003, not a lot of Muslims coming out of law schools at this point. So it was a great opportunity. I worked with him for a little over a year, learned a lot, but criminal defense just wasn't my lane.
So what is criminal defense for the audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's when you're talking about private attorneys these are folks, everybody has heard of a public defender. And you always hear in the Miranda rights for people, if you cannot afford a lawyer will be appointed to you. Well, that's public defender. And in Georgia, in some of the local counties, they also have what they call the appointed list. But private criminal defense is if you've been accused of a crime and then you hire a lawyer to defend you in that case. So the defense attorney is the person that kind of sits the opposite of the prosecutor. And their sole job is to force the state to basically prove its case, right? It's not necessarily to prove that you're innocent. It's to force the state to prove its case. And they just defend you in the process. So I did that for a little over a year. And again, just the nature of the work was not my passion. Left that firm, joined a small private firm, and they had me focusing on personal injury law. Again, good experience, but not my passion.
So personal injury law would be like those billboards that we see all the time.
You got
right?
it.
Like, oh, you've been in an accident.
You got it.
33%.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah,
Exactly.
That stuff. Got it.
You got. I think everybody kind of has a good idea on what that type of law is now. But yeah, that was what I did for a little over a year as well. Again, not my passion. So I moved into a firm, Kumar, Prabhu, Patel, and Banerjee. Now, this is an all South Indian or all South Asian owned law firm. At the time, again, very novel. Those types of law firms did not exist back in the early 2000s. They were actually a pioneer in that regard. But you know what's interesting is that if you have all, Desi partners, you just instinctually draw a bunch of Desi clientele. And then what that does is it instinctually skews your practice towards business law. And I had never considered business law. I'd never thought I wanted to get involved in business law. But the minute I started working there, I just felt a click. I was like, oh, this feels good. I like this. And that's basically, I worked there 6 years learning business law and up until the point I started my own firm in 2012.
Got it. So what specifically in business law do you touch? Do you touch real estate? Do you touch mergers and acquisitions? What does your practice actually cover?
So nowadays, the way the practice is set up is, I like to think of it as, it has a really large umbrella of practices that we cover. So, let me say it this way. There's the industries we serve, and then there's the work we do for people within those industries. Now, the work is going to be common and only slightly varied based on the industry.
Got it.
But if you're talking about the industries that we serve, it's kind of almost like the way our community is made up. It's franchise, it's hotel motel, it's C-store, it's IT, it's medical services, real estate's a big part of it. So all of this is kind of where our expertise has been crafted. But now in terms of what we do, it's everything from people who want to form companies, LLCs, and kind of from the startup phase of that, all the way through, the operating agreements, the partnership agreements, the various contractual obligations that a company or a business might have, a lot of landlord-tenant, a lot of lease work. We represent people on buyer side, purchase or seller side of transactions. And then we also do the litigation that comes off of that. So our litigation practice is a business-focused litigation practice that typically our fact patterns are going to involve business deals gone bad or some aspect of a business claim, collections, things of that sort.
Got it. So, just out of curiosity, so you worked for Patel Banerjee, and what was the other
Yeah, it was a
one?
Kumar Patel.
So then how did you transition from that firm to building out your own company? What was the process like? Were there any mental struggles or hurdles that you had along the way? Like, walk us through that journey a little bit.
Oh yeah, nothing but mental struggles and hurdles, man. So Kumar Patel, Prabhu, and Banerjee, so KPPB. So that firm really gave me a very strong foundation in all of this. And the thing is, at the time that I left in 2011, I was loving my job. I loved everything about it. I loved my experience there. I loved the people there. So it's hard and it's rare to leave a place you love. But what it boiled down to, and this is something that I really think, if I could impress this upon your audience, one of the things that I think is we spend so much time planning our careers and our trajectories. We also forget to kind of account for life. And life happens not off on the side, but literally directly overlaid all these business plans, career plans, et cetera. And at the time, I think I made the same mistake as a lot of folks. I didn't account for the life aspect. I had this 15-year plan, 5-5-5, but where was life in that? I got married. At one point, at the time that I left, I had a 2-year-old son, and we were expecting our second child. And what dawned on me is like, even though leaving to start my own firm doesn't fit in my 15-year plan right now, it's now or never, because the family's growing. I'm only going to get more comfortable. And comfort, as you know, is the enemy of progress many times. So my whole thing was like, now's the time I got to jump. So like a lot of people that start their own thing, I didn't feel like I was ready, but I didn't think I had a choice because I felt like the time was only going to get harder if I waited.
So I guess one of the things that comes into my mind is normally people jump into business either because there's also a financial aspect of it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's like, oh, I can make a lot more by doing this too. Was that a component in your decision as well?
It really wasn't, man. For me, it was a lifestyle choice. I had a vision for the kind of life that I wanted to have with the family. Like I knew that, we prayed for, we hoped for 3 children. We were blessed with that. My vision, even then in 2011, was I wanted to have a life where I could be highly involved with their life, with whatever they do, their activities. And so now here we are, fast forward 14, 12, and 10. They're in every activity under the sun. And I get to be there for a lot of that. I got to coach every sports team my kids played on. I got to be hyper involved in all their school activities, taking parent-teacher conferences in the middle of the day. All these things that I felt that if I didn't have complete autonomy would not be possible. So it was a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, because I think that's a lot of complaint of a lot of attorneys currently today is like they don't have enough time for their own families because business comes over family, right? They prioritize that specifically. It's like this is so your decision was more I want more freedom.
That was it.
Wow.
That was it.
Okay. And not a lot of people think that way. So especially in the Desi community, strangely enough, it's like they're more financially driven typically. So I guess did your wife influence that more so like or
So now at the time that I made this decision, my wife was working for Coca-Cola. She had worked there for 13 years. And I will tell you, she was my biggest supporter. She was, I obviously ran this by her. And I recall waiting. It was like a little short moment of silence. I was wondering what she was thinking. And all she said was, go for it. And that meant a lot, honestly, to hear that from your wife, to feel that level of confidence and support. So it made me kind of even go harder. But no, there was no, conversation about like the purpose why. I didn't get into the why I'm doing this for freedom, or that never really came about. I just told her, I said, listen, the time is now. Like the window is now. She knew that I had hoped to be able to start my own firm one day. I don't think she knew it was going to be in 2011. I think she was thinking this was going to be something further down the line, though.
So 2011 is an interesting time because we're only 2 years away from the financial crisis that hit Atlanta. It basically destroyed us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Property prices are dilapidated.
Yeah.
Business isn't really
Yeah.
getting anywhere. The entire market is basically flat.
Yeah.
Who was your first client once you established your firm?
Yeah.
Who gave you that golden ticket to okay,
Yeah.
after getting the support of your spouse and your family members, like who was your first client? Was it a previous existing client from another firm that you were at, or was it just fresh?
That's an awesome question. I remember there were two, I considered two first clients. And what I mean by that is I had one of the clients who I had been heavily involved with at the previous firm. When I told them I was leaving, they were adamant that they wanted to keep working with me. I said, listen, I was like, you're the client of this firm. It's up to you how you want to handle it, but I'm just telling you, you're here, you're with this firm. I'm starting another firm. After a couple months, they found their way to me, and I was grateful that they did. But the first client that I got completely just out of the blue, unknown to me, was someone that came referred, and that's really the point here is that the referral network just took off immediately. Made the announcement that I was starting my own, and then luckily friends, colleagues, everybody just started putting the word out for me. And then that drew in a case of a real estate agent who was having a dispute that kind of stemmed off of a divorce over a piece of property. So it was a real estate dispute right out of the gate, and it ended up being a really strong case for us, a good case. We got a good outcome on the case. And this was within 2 months of opening, so it just felt like, wow, like this was like could have been doing this all along.
So when you open up the firm, I mean, I'm assuming you had to put down a deposit and everything. Did you have money saved up before you started the firm?
No, honestly, it wasn't like that for me. I got my only thought process was go as low as possible on overhead. I found a very affordable office space in downtown Norcross, where our firm is currently. And essentially, I was just renting one room inside this office building. So it was me and a laptop. And, I think at that point in 2012, my overhead was probably about $350 a month.
Oh, wow.
So if I made $351, I made a profit. So, so I was like, I think I can swing that. But fortunately, like I said, the referral network picked up quick, and work was coming in. Now I will tell you that when you start day one, you're not really comfortable being picky. So you're taking anything, and I call it rent law, anything that pays the rent. So it was a lot of different kinds of cases.
Do you think for a lot of businesses today, is that a good practice to have in the very beginning, or is it better to be picky and choosy with your clients? Because some clients can be nightmare clients, some clients can be really good. And how do you determine whether you have a good or a bad client?
Yeah, no, man, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? I think it's going to depend on a few factors, but I think generally I'm a proponent of trying to be as open as possible at the outset. It's really tough to tell someone who's starting something on their own for the first time to say no to things, because you're scared. You're scared of saying no. You're scared, am I going to make it? And if I'm turning money away or I'm turning opportunities away, am I shooting myself in the foot? So there's that very real fear of what comes from saying no. But there is value in being kind of know with parameters. Like, you just have to know there's certain things you will not do or cannot do or will never do. And you got to know what those are for yourself.
So what is that for you? What does that know with parameters at this current moment in time? Obviously, it can change, but what does that mean? Define that for me.
So now, at this stage of my career, it's not getting involved in cases where I just don't have expertise. One of the temptations, and this is a very common theme in the law, is that lawyers are said, listen, you're a lawyer, you're smart, you can figure it out. So if a great case comes to you and it's not what you do, don't say no to it. You can learn that area of law. Just research the cases and go do the law. That was a common theme, I think, especially early on, and I think it's still a prevalent theme within the legal community. But the general rule that I live by now is if it's not something that I can truly bring value to, like right off the bat, I'm going to pass. Not for just myself, but really for the client's sake, right? It's not fair to the client.
It becomes a service delivery issue, right? 100%. Because it's like, I can't deliver on the service to the level or to the standard I want to deliver it at. Therefore, I'm not giving my client the best service possible.
And that's exactly right. And I'll add to that is that it's unfair for the client who really, really needs the help to have to pay for your training. So, at the end of the day, if I'm now 20 years into the practice of law, I should have developed some expertise, and that's where I need to focus. And so for me, that's business law.
Hey there, listeners. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Diary of a Muslim Entrepreneur. I just want to take a quick moment to thank you for being here. Now, here's something surprising. Did you know that over 95% of the people watching or listening right now aren't actually subscribed? Isn't that so crazy? That means for every 1,000 of you who are watching this, 950 of you guys are not subscribed. Subscribing is super simple. Just hit the notification bell down below. It makes a huge difference here for the team at Dome. When you hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel, you're helping us grow, which means we can bring in bigger and more inspiring guests, and guests who can answer some of the questions that you might actually have. It allows us to produce higher quality videos and make the show the best it can possibly be. The more support we get, the more we can give back to you with even better content. And here's something special. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're doing a giveaway for a brand new set of 2nd-gen Apple AirPods Pro that are right in my hands right now. So if you want a chance to win and help us hit that milestone, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it, engage in the comments down below, and follow us on Instagram. You'll find all the links right down in the show notes. If you're really enjoying the show, consider becoming a sponsor of the show. Your support directly helps us keep these powerful stories coming and allow you even to reach a community of like-minded Muslims and entrepreneurs. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, engage in the comments down below, follow us on Instagram, wherever you find your podcast, and leave us a review. And maybe you'll be the lucky winner of those AirPods Pro. Now let's get back on to the show. Do you leverage the expertise of other attorneys within your own firm so then that way you can branch out into different sectors? So then that way, let's say you focus just on real estate, maybe you have somebody that focuses just on M&A.
Yeah.
Does that exist in your practice today?
It does. So not necessarily along that line. So we think of it, um, the thought came up, okay, we know that our bread and butter is business law, but we know at the end of the day, business law is just people law. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with real people. The majority of our clients, we're not dealing with some large conglomerate where we got to go through a board and, deal with outside or internal counsel. We're dealing with the actual business owners.
So would you call that corporate law? Or like, is that a different subsect?
No, it's really not necessarily the division of law as much as it is the size or particular scale of the clients that we deal with. We're dealing with more closely held clientele. So the traditional mom and pop, as well as just a closely held company where maybe you only have 2 or 3 members. So usually when we talk to people, we're talking to the decision makers. And the reason that's an important thing to understand is they view you as their lawyer. They don't make the distinctions that we in the legal community make about my practice areas or my specialties or my subspecialties. To them, you're their lawyer. So that means that if they run into a problem where they have a family member who's getting divorced, or they have someone in their family that's passed away, or they have someone who's been in a car accident, they're going to come to you. So what we've been able to do with this understanding is, while business law is our core competency and the bread and butter of our firm, we have a wills, trust, and estates practice. We have a family law practice. We have a criminal defense practice. And we have a personal injury practice. And we have attorneys heading up each one of these practices. And so when a client comes to us and they have a specific issue, many times I'm introducing them to one of these other attorneys because that other attorney is going to run point on their case. And the wills, trust, and estates practice, I'll just mention, we started this year. It was the first time we've had to build a practice from the ground up in forever, and it's been an amazing journey. The attorney who handles that is named Bukhari Nuruddin, and he is a great example of someone who has really taken ownership on the practice to the point that now I can introduce him to a client, and the client has no concerns about whether they're going to get the same level of service or same level of attention as if it was me doing it personally.
Got it. Yeah. So one of the questions that comes into my mind is, a lot of entrepreneurs find it very difficult to go from one employee being themselves to hiring their first employee to their second to the third, so on and so on. What was that process like? What was the journey of getting, to build up the practice to where it is today, where now you have multiple divisions doing multiple different parts? What was your first hire?
Yeah.
And what was that journey like? Did you let that, I guess you can, I don't know if you can go into the details of like, if you let them go, or like, what was the process around those pieces like? Because in business, employees are always either they're a benefactor to the business or they're sometimes malignant, right? Or problematic, I guess, in some cases.
I'm shaking my head because, man, this question is, I could talk for a long time.
I think both of us can.
Yeah. Well, so look, the process of going from a solo to a firm model, this is something that is unique in the law, but I think other businesses deal with this as well. But within the law, that process of going from a solo practitioner to a firm is by far one of the hardest, most just frustrating processes that I could really ever describe.
And why is it frustrating?
Because you're fighting yourself. You're fighting yourself. You're fighting your own understandings of things. When you're solo, it's about getting the work done. It's hustle mentality. You are just grinding. You don't care about processes, procedures, controls. You don't care about any of that. You're not documenting things. You're just getting work done. And you're getting good results, and clients are happy, and you're making your money. But the problem is, the minute you make a single hire, you can no longer live like that, right? At least not if you want to be effective. The minute you start bringing in people to the fold, and it goes from being a solo practice to a small firm, you have to have structure, processes, controls, procedures, policies. You have to have everything that a real life breathing business does, because the hustle stuff doesn't work anymore when other people are involved, right? The biggest problem I found was that I was the centralized database for any and everything when I was solo. Now I'm bringing people on, and I want people to help. And at the outset, by the way, I will tell you, there's a transitional phase. You're not just solo to small firm. You're solo to still solo, but with support staff, right? Which is a difference between being a firm, right? Solo with the support staff. So my first hire, to answer your question, was a receptionist / legal assistant, and simultaneously I hired an associate attorney. And so it was 3 of us. and we were in a fairly large office space at the time, 2,500 square feet, way more office space than I had ever had. But I kind of used the old, if you build it, they will come model. I said, it's better to have a little more space to grow into. So we took over this larger space in Norcross, made these 2 hires. I said, okay, we got a firm now. I was like, what do I do? How does this work? But immediately I realized that if I'm going to ask for their support and their help, they have to know what I know. I can't be the only one holding information in this firm. But it took me all of 7 years, because this was 2017 when I made my first hire. So it took me all of then to now to really truly understand how to centralize information, how to have processes, procedures. And it's still a work in progress. We literally just brought on a law firm consulting company this year to help us with that, because I've been trying to do it for 7 years and haven't been great at it.
I guess the idea here is to leverage the expertise of other individuals to help you achieve your next target, whether it's going from 1 million to 2 million, whether it's 2 million to 10 million, right? So, and I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs also struggle too. It's like, hey, you don't know what you don't know, right? And by leveraging consultants, you can shorten the gap.
So true.
And I think that's also one of the things in the Desi community that I've noticed is like, oh, don't pay for it, just do it yourself, right? And it's creeped into the mentality of just the people who are working, right? And you can see these young guys who are in the e-com space or in other businesses altogether, and they're scaling from 100,000 to 1 million to 10 million. It's like, what in the world? Like, how did they do it?
Right.
Just like, if they can do it, then surely we can do it too. It's just that's where the consultants come into play.
It's a good point what you're making in terms of the timing. You can really break your neck and get there after a lot of hard uphill
But
battles.
it also depends on like what do you want for your lifestyle, right? So there's a balance there to play as well, where like, oh, I can have this astronomical growth, or I can have this more steady growth. So that's more suitable for my family and for my lifestyle.
You're exactly right, and actually there is a tipping point in there, and that is the tipping point is when you go from having this business. If you recall, I started this again for lifestyle purposes. But the minute it becomes counter to that, and now I am working overnight, I'm working weekends, I'm doing all the things that were literally against why I started the firm, I've gone too far. And now that's the tipping point, is you got to get back to basically understanding why did you even start the firm. And that's been the journey we've been on.
So whenever that happens, do you tend to hire somebody else, and then that way they can take on more work and more work away from you? I mean, because at least when I was running the restaurants, one of the things that we did was like, oh, I've solved this one problem. Let me go ahead and hire another person, or I'll throw a body at the problem, right? And I found that sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. It depends on the quality of the hire that we have.
That is such a great insight, because that's exactly right. Throwing a body at the problem is a good way to put it. That's what I did. And to your point, I hired out of fear. So, I was scared because I'm like, man, what's going on? We're out of control. We got to get under control. We need to hire. Okay, you're here. Good. It's your job, right? And then so you just, regardless of fit, regardless of culture, any of those things, you're just bringing somebody in. And when I was doing it, again, with the legal context in mind, you're looking for credentials, you're looking for qualifications. Saw good-looking pieces of resume paper. I said, that looks great. Here's the job. Again, never paid attention to fit, never paid attention to culture. And I will tell you that from 17 to probably 22, we had a lot of flameouts. I'm talking about turnover on a 6 to 12-month basis, which it kills you as a business. I mean, you're literally one step forward, 2 steps back.
The training and the rehire cost is just so astronomical in some cases.
100%. The only thing that changed is I finally decided, listen, we're going to be smarter about this. We're going to focus. We're going to assume credentials are a minimum. We're going to focus on fit. And so our last several hires have all been fit-based hires, meaning they're the kind of people you want to be around on a regular basis. They're the kind of people that have a hard work ethic. They're the people that have shown themselves to be extremely loyal. So these last several hires have really helped accelerate the projection of the firm, the trajectory of the firm, just because of who they are. And that was not something we were taking into account for a long period of time.
Got it. So there's a concept or an idea, at least when entrepreneurs are hiring employees, where you have A players, B players, and C players. How do you determine an A or B or C in at least the legal profession? Regardless, I guess I don't know if that's just an attorney or a paralegal or whatever else you may have within that business.
In the law, I can speak for the law, and I'll tell you, in the law, one of the key designators for someone who you consider to be a high quality candidate is their writing skills. If they present a piece of writing to you, and it's clean, it's grammatically solid, it's structurally solid, the details, the formatting, all these, that's a really good sign. That's a really good sign of their personality, of their capabilities, because writing is so fundamental to the law. And so to me, it might be, I don't know if that makes it easier for us or harder for us, but that's what I look for. In the last couple of hires that we made, especially the last attorney hire, the writing stood out. And that's when I knew I was getting a good hire. So for us, that's what we look to.
Got it. So I just want to rewind just a second
Sure.
because there was a question that just popped in my head, which was when you hired your first attorney.
Yeah.
The model in most law firms is that you're basically billed per hour, right?
Right.
So as a law firm, you basically your incentives are very highly tied to your time.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'm billing at $500 an hour, $400 an hour,
Sure.
etc. That when you were a fresh graduate, was that something new, novel to you? Or was that something that, especially when you transitioned into building out the firm, was that something that, oh, I can now charge $1,000 an hour?
Yeah. So the hourly model in the law, I'll just go ahead and let you know now, I hate it. I hate what it is. I have a personal take on this, and I actually think it's unethical. I think it actually disserves the client. I think it literally puts you at odds with your client if you're a billable firm, because then what it does is basically incentivize you not to get a result, but to just take as much time as possible, right? Which is not in your client's interest. That's not in your client's interest. There's very few clients who it is in their interest for you to take all the time you need with their case.
And it also comes back to the topic that you mentioned earlier, which was, I don't want to waste or build my business off of, or train myself based off of clients' dollars, right?
Exactly right.
So then it's client service delivery as well.
It is. And so I do think there's an inherent ethical conflict there, but you can't say that to the legal industry because 99.9% of law firms operate that way.
So
We
then
don't.
If you have the,
We
so you
don't. We don't.
Okay.
We don't. So what I will tell you is when I worked for KPPB, that was a traditional billable firm. Had to bill, had to track my time, hated it. I said to myself, if I ever start my own firm, I will never do billable hours. And so we are exclusively, I will say exclusively, there are some rare cases where we will do a billable engagement, but we're a flat fee firm. We're a flat fee firm, and that has been, I think, a direct driver of our growth and success.
So how do you determine that? Because a lot of law firms, they'll say, okay, it's going to take me 10 hours for this, 15 hours for this, 20 hours for this, 100 hours for this particular billable project. Now, how do you determine that? Or have you done so many that you figured out, okay, this is what it could be?
It's that experience allows you to be able to do it better. It's all art versus science. I mean, it's like there's no formula I can tell you that this is how we derive it. It's art. It's a feel. It's a knowing, okay, I've done this many of these in the past. This is what it's been. Or more accurately, I'll tell you these days now, if I have someone walk into my office now, at this stage of my career, this stage of my, I guess, skill level, feeling the strongest I've ever felt as a lawyer, I think it's now about sizing up their goal and the potential fastest route to that outcome. And then understanding how much time that might likely take, understanding who could actually execute on that within the office, because it's not always me, right? And then just putting a fee around that. So there's things you just have to understand, and I wish I could explain it better, but it just ends up being to a certain level just intuitive. But if you don't know what the client's goal is, you're never going to get to this point.
So it comes down to asking clear, concise questions to the client. And then based off of that, you can determine, oh, it's going to take me this much time.
Exactly right. And one of the things that we do, and again, we're a little bit different, I think, in the sense that we do this, is we have a very strict consultation policy. What I mean by that is we charge for consultations. There's tons of folks that advertise, hey, free consultations. We charge for our consultations. It's $250 for a 45-minute consultation. If you have a document-based case, we have you send those documents to us in advance. We review them in advance, and then we come into that consultation, and we're talking turkey. We're really getting into your case. And in our objective, number one, what is your goal? Because it's not always apparent. But then number two is our objective is to be able to let you leave with 2, 3, 4 options in terms of how you can proceed. And then from there, many times clients will come back and say, okay, we want to hire you and we want to go option 2, or we want to hire you, we want to do options 1. But without that consultation formality and putting people in that process at the outset, we never get to the point of being able to size up the case, you know? And so that has been, again, for us, a very good process. It's worked well, it's driven growth, and it's made clients feel satisfied because they're getting certainty. That's the thing about the billable hour model. You don't get certainty. It's a blank check. You're giving the lawyer a blank check.
Absolutely. And that's so true. That's so true. Um, so maybe a little bit more of a personal question here. What has been your most interesting and what's been your worst case that you've ever dealt with? Because like I know that lawyers have stories, and this is just one of the things that I'm just interested in as of current day, obviously.
Oof. Oh, the stories, brother, the stories. I will tell you the worst case. I mean, there's been some very, very unpleasant cases that we've dealt with. And when you say worst, I mean, I could tell you worst client, I could tell you worst case. For this story, though, I will tell you that I think one of the hardest ones to ever deal with was a case. And this really, it's interesting we even got involved in it because it's not really in our wheelhouse. Long story short, there was a very well-known imam who had some issues within his family. And at the core of it, his son was accused of kidnapping his own son. So the imam's grandson had been kidnapped by his own son. And so it was a nationwide manhunt. And the imam, to his credit, could have easily just said, hey, my son's innocent. I want you to support my son. What the imam actually asked us to do was support the boy's mother, who would have been the son's ex-wife at that time. And the thought process was, the imam understood that this was a situation where the justice requires his own son bringing the boy back, but because he's not, the mother's in trouble. So the mother needs support. She's not from here. She doesn't speak the language. She's getting media requests. So basically, we became the mother's attorneys, and we dealt with international media helping on this story. And it became a 2-week engagement where we were every day dealing with news outlets from all over the place. And unfortunately, the story had a very sad ending. That's why I count it as one of my worst cases. Is the little boy was found dead in New Mexico, and there was a huge trial that happened as a result. And it was a really sad case to be involved with. We worked real closely with the FBI. They came and met with us multiple times, and so we were in the middle of this thing. And again, being a business law firm, it's not our everyday.
It's not your wheelhouse.
It's not our everyday case. But it was an example of. Part of our mission is we want to be a resource for the community. We do that in the business sphere, but the reality is if there's something that is this serious happening in our community, my feeling is I should be directly involved somehow to assist however I can. And that was an example in that case. But it was a sad case. I mean, I won't lie. I had nightmares about that case.
That was the mental turmoil aspect of just taking on that case
and then just seeing what happened to the little boy. And, I had, at the time, my children were young. And so it was very, it was raw.
Relatable. It was relatable.
Relatable and raw. Yeah, absolutely. A case I take a lot of pride in that I would count amongst one of our greatest success actually happened earlier this year. Elderly woman. She, unfortunately, was, I guess you'd call her the victim of some attorney malpractice. She had a divorce back in the 80s.
Wow.
But her divorce attorney never recorded a very important legal document that would have made her the legal owner of the home she was living in. The husband ends up passing away, and the husband's second wife basically says, well, the house is mine now. So we end up going to war with the bank who was claiming ownership of this house title. It was a 5-year-old case. The case had all these different twists and turns, and we lost at every step of the way. And I had to tell the client, I said, it's not looking good. You're going to have to move out of this house. She was devastated. She was supporting her own mother. So this woman is in her late 70s supporting her 90-something-year-old mother, and they live in the house alone. And she's like, I'm not going to have anywhere to go, and I'm going to be homeless. And so long story short, we ended up fortunately being able to force a trial in this case. And we felt that we had a very strong defense that we could argue that really centered around fraud. And it was this idea that the second wife forced the husband to sign some paperwork that put the bank in position to take the house. Basically, she took out a loan in the name of this house that she didn't have a right to at the time. So, I mean, it got crazy. Long story short, we go to trial against the bank in DeKalb County. No way we should have won because it's the bank and they got their big fancy lawyers. And but you know what happened? It was a jury trial. And when the jury heard how our client was just in these impossible situations going all the way back to the 80s, and the divorce lawyer screwing up, and then the court clerk screwing up, and everybody screwing up, and then here she is now about to get kicked out.
Yeah.
They didn't go with the bank. They went with us. And when I tell you, I don't know if you've ever seen footage of the OJ verdict.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so when OJ was announced, when basically they came back and said OJ is not guilty, the way he hugged his lawyer, the way everybody was hugging, that's how she hugged me. It was surreal. It was in the court. She's crying. She's jumping on top. And by the way, to paint the picture, she's about 5'2". So she's like, it was a surreal moment, man. But that was a situation where, just as bad as I felt in the other scenario, that's how good I felt in this scenario.
It was just completely opposite end of the spectrum.
Totally different mental health effects.
So here's another question that just popped in my mind, which was, why do cases get stuck in the legal system for such a long time? In this case, it's been 5 years for this particular case. I mean, what causes the bottleneck?
Man, I've had cases go on for 10 years. I mean, it is insane. There's multiple reasons for it. Now, this particular case started pre-COVID. COVID hit. I think most cases that are open now in Georgia, if they are 4 to 5 years, you can attribute 2 to 3 years of that delay just to COVID alone. But generally, the issue is just volume. You know, in the metro counties, Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, Cobb even, I mean, you're just going to have tremendous volume of litigation. So courts, you know, even if you got a 20-judge court, you know, every judge has got a couple of thousand cases on their docket. And, you know, you're taking them in kind of chronological order. But things that throw those cases out of order are occasionally lawyers will need more time. So they'll ask for something called a continuance, which is just more time. So it'll put cases kind of out of sequence. And, you know, if you're not diligent, and part of it, it's on the people that are involved in the lawsuits to kind of push the case, right? It goes back to what I was telling you earlier. A lot of lawyers aren't motivated to move cases. Why? Because they're making money over time. Our whole model with the flat fee, and I know you didn't ask this, but I'll just tell you, our best margin is if we can close it fast.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, because then it basically shortens the time to delivery,
Exactly.
right? And I
the
think,
fee doesn't change, right? So the faster you close it, the more your margin.
yeah.
But at some point, you're going to go overboard, right? You're going to be upside down because you're going to spend more time than you ever could have imagined, and now you're losing. So we are very motivated not to ever be in that position. So we're always trying to close as soon as possible.
Understood.
Which is good for the client. They get fixed costs, they get predictability, and they get their outcomes sooner rather than later.
So how did COVID affect the business? Because during that time, businesses were shutting down left and right, and now we're in an era where COVID's not so much of an issue, so much more, but you're seeing the rise of some businesses in some cases. And
we were one of those that benefited in the sense that so many business owners needed help and guidance. We were heavily involved in the PPP program, helping clients qualify for that. A lot of our franchise clients,
So what was the PPP program for the audience that doesn't know?
Yeah, so basically it was and I can't remember off the top of my head what the 3 Ps stood for, but it was a government loan program that essentially came with a forgiveness concept to where you could apply for it if you received the loan. As long as you showed proof that you were using that loan for your business purposes, at the end you qualified to have the loan forgiven. So it was a bit of, you know, the way my clients viewed it, and we applied for it as a law firm and obtained it, but the way it all was viewed was, okay, this has the potential to basically be a grant, right? But you have to show that you use it for the right purposes.
I think at the time there were a lot of people who were running businesses and they just simply bought, you know, some of the most lavish things. I remember seeing some cases.
There's a lot of PPP fraud, for sure.
A lot of PPP fraud where basically people were just buying things because, hey, it's free money from the government, right?
I know.
And it's at low interest rates or no interest rate in some cases, depending on where you got it from.
To a lot of our clients' credits, they were smart enough to understand that they were going to have to really, truly qualify and track this. They needed to know the ins and outs. So we became kind of PPP experts in terms of the compliance aspect of it. And then we had all these clients that we were consulting. And now where it got interesting is that because business was down and because the economy was in turmoil, a lot of these folks couldn't use some of the mid and large size law firms. So they were looking for more fee sensitive options. Our flat fee model appealed to a lot of clients. So we actually gained a lot of clients during this time period because they were looking for people that were doing what we were doing, which is being, you know, essentially sensitive to people's financial constraints.
That's interesting. So what does religion play any sort of, I guess, overarching theme in your business at all? Does being a Muslim affect how you do business in general?
100%.
Give me examples.
So we're closed on Eid,
Okay.
regardless of when it is. We during Ramadan we have Ramadan hours, so anyone who's fasting can leave at Zohar time and just take the rest of the day, do what they need to do. We uh, uh, you know, obviously Jummah on Fridays. Our lawyers or Muslims, whoever practice, and they go for Jummah. So, and many times don't have to come back to the office. So, we kind of build our schedule around the actual lifestyle. But now, the more important way that we do it is just through our ethic, our way of being, our desire to focus on justice and right and being right and fair as opposed to making a profit. We will forego many cases where the money is right, but the case is not, right? Because the case has to be right. And for
Like,
the case to be right, the ethics have to be right, the morals have to be right, the client has to be right. So we're at the stage now, fortunately, going back to what we talked about
yeah.
earlier at the outset, it's hard to say
Yeah.
no. But now we do say no if it doesn't match what we're looking for in terms of a client attorney match.
Got it. So this is basically the culture you've created for the
Yes.
Baig Law Firm, and that is actually admirable.
Thank you.
Because not a lot of people actually build businesses with these kind of concepts or ideas in place into their business, and I think maybe this upcoming generation will be the one that actually takes that to another level altogether, right?
No, alhamdulillah. Thank you. Yeah, it's important. At the outset, one of the things I knew is because we're working with so many people in the community that, and the desire to be a community resource, it just, at the end of the day, just to simplify it, it just boils down. I think your business is always just going to be an extension of you at the end of the day. So whoever you are, where you'll feel that tension is if your business is not reflecting you. Then there's a tension. But fortunately, I've never felt that tension because I've made sure that the business is just a reflection or extension of my personal ethic, which my personal ethic comes from Islam. So
Yeah.
everything you see in that firm, whether you know it or not, if you're an employee, maybe you don't know it. If you're a customer, maybe a client, you don't know it. But the ethic, the way we operate, it's Islam. The way we host our clients when they come to the office, the manners that we give them, the courtesy we extend them, it's Islam. The way that we will partner with nonprofits, Islamic nonprofits, masajid. We represent, I don't know, a couple of dozen masajid around Metro Atlanta, and every one of them gets a discounted fee as a starting point. They're discounted right off the bat. The nonprofits, the Islamic schools, and then we partner with CARE, with ICNA. So we try to basically put our money where our mouth is and live according to our beliefs.
SubhanAllah, that's really amazing, and again, really admirable.
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much.
What does the future of the Baig Law Firm look like? Do you plan on running this for the next 30, 40 years? Or give us a little bit of insight into what you think the future of the company looks like.
I'll tell you a funny story. So, I have two boys and a girl, 14, 12, and 10. My 12-year-old son has already in his mind taken over the firm. All right, he's already taken it over. He's going to law school. He's going to take over the firm. And I have been told by him on multiple occasions that when he does take it over, he's moving it to Vegas. Don't ask why. Yeah. So that's my son Idris.
Okay.
Idris he's a party in a bottle. So, but seriously though, the stage where we are now, man, it's actually a very exciting stage. And I was mentioning a little bit to you before we started today, but it's an exciting stage because through getting the consultant involved and through some of our more recent hires, the future has kind of come into focus a little bit for us. I think we have real potential to expand our outreach really throughout the region. And we've always been that, by the way. We've been a firm that even out of our little Norcross outpost, we've touched the whole state, the whole country. I've been involved in lawsuits and other business matters, California, New York, Chicago, you name it. But a lot of that is just because, again, people kind of know you and they see that you're here, and then they find matters that involve you that have these, other tentacles that take you to other jurisdictions. We've been in other countries. Point is, the infrastructure that we're looking to build right now, I think can sustain that on a more regional basis. So where is it going? I don't know if we ever want to be a truly large law firm. I don't know if we'll ever be that 50 lawyer firm. But, it feels to me that we're on track to build something that is very substantive and that is going to achieve both goals of driving revenue while still doing good, meaningful work, which that's important to me. If it was just about getting volume, we could get volume.
Yeah.
But that's not the name of the game for us. The work, we want it to be meaningful.
Got it. All right. So How can people actually reach out to you? What social platforms do you like using? I guess
Yeah.
just list them out and then.
Sure, Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. So we're on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Our profiles, don't laugh if you go look at a couple of them. The Twitter is very, I'm actually debating deactivating that one. But point is that, the best way to reach out to us is to call our office. So our number's on our website.
Yeah.
Our website's baiglaw.com.
Okay.
Pretty easy. But we usually will initiate everything through the main line in the office.
Okay, got it. And what I'll do also is put a list of all of the socials in the description, so then
Great.
that way
Thank
people
you.
can reach out. And it was a pleasure having you,
Alhamdulillah.
Khurram.
Thank you
I
so much.
really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on to
No,
Diary of a
this
Muslim
was-
Entrepreneur. And hopefully this was insightful in some way, shape, or form. I really do appreciate
Listen,
it again.
this was great. I just want to let you know I've been watching your work. MashaAllah, you're doing an amazing job. This is such a cool thing for our community to have. So really appreciate you creating the space for this.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.